know, how is your mom doing, man? I was trying to like research a little bit about her, and I got sidetracked a lot, but how is she doing, man?
81 years old. She'll be 82 in October. She just received her hard copy of the book in the last 2 days, because clearly she was interviewed for it, but we didn't give her the transcript because, she was not interested. But she got her first hard copy and she just cried, because when you have sacrificed your life for a purpose or a cause, and you see your life's dreams fulfilled through another vehicle that you influence, you're just overcome with pride. And so she just cried when we talked over the weekend, because she just said, can you believe, as we say in the church, God has brought me a mighty long way. She said, can you believe God has brought us a mighty long way? And so, and it's not about how much money you have in the bank. It's not about recognition. It's just a recognition that all of my efforts were blessed, because I have a son that's married. He's a father. He still donates money to his home church. Those are the things that are important to a mom, not about if you're on TV or how much money, but are you a caring, thoughtful person that don't forget where you came from, and you certainly don't forget your mama. Those are the things that, impact. It also, I tell people all the time, there are two little voices always, my wife on the left side, my mom on the right side. So whenever I lose my way, those voices come in, and it's not the commercial where you see the devil on one side and an angel on the other. I got two angels. You've seen those commercials where you got the devil saying, do it, and you've got the angel saying, don't do it. I've been blessed with two angels on each shoulder. And so she's doing well, she's healthy, and she's living a good life.
Man, she was so inspiring to me throughout the book, Stephen, just in the sense of how she makes that decision, man, that changes the whole trajectory, man. There were a couple moments in this book that this is unusual for me, Stephen, that I teared up, man. And I'll tell you the other one later, but when she's making that trip, I am going, I feel like I was all in on that one, Stephen, in the sense of this is deep. And then here you guys end up in the motel room, man.
Yeah.
And I am like, who would have thought this? It's like that phrase, but God, man.
Well, it's one of the things that I talk about is I literally went through my life and wrote down the decisions that really mattered. There are only 12 in my life that I feel were game changer decisions that I had to get right. Because let's be honest, we're all going to make mistakes. And most mistakes we can rebound from. And so when I think about those 12, and then I think about my mom and I think about her decisions, she will tell you there are only 6 or 7 that really matter. So in life, it's about getting the big decisions right. And in that case, at 29 years old, this was not, at a time when women were being encouraged to go out there. Women were being encouraged, you set your own path. Women were being encouraged that, look, you stay at home, you mind the family, you do what you're told, and the husband is the head of the household, particularly in the Black community. Mm-hmm. And so to counter all of that, I certainly didn't understand the gravity of the decision or how she was thinking about it. But certainly, like all of us, as we get older, our parents get smarter because we're now mature enough to take a lens into their decisions and understand a little bit better.
Steve, you talk about this a little bit on page 18, and I keep going to the page numbers here because I know they might be correct here, but page 18 here, the copy that I have, the special copy, I'm going to call it here.
Okay.
Did you feel like you owed us something in telling this story? Because I felt like, and I've read a lot of books throughout the year here, Stephen. But
Right.
so far, this is the best book I've read all year. And I know
Oh
it's
my
only in March, man. But did you feel like you owed us something? Because you bring it all to the table, man. Like
yeah.
nothing's left out here.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, as a person of color, and women probably go through this as well, you go through a period where you feel you're an imposter. You feel that you don't deserve to be in this position because so many others have struggled. I mean, it is frightening that there's so few of us. Let's just take corporate America, and you could probably go to any other, part of business, sports, news, whatever. We just don't have enough representation. And you're saying, now, how did I get here? What did I do to deserve this opportunity? And so part of this calling is that there's a song that says you die twice. You die the day they put you in the grave. And the second is the last time somebody mentions your name. It's a song called Glorious. Yeah. And so the last thing any of us want to do is when they put us in the ground, that's it. And so there's a responsibility that if we all could think about how do we ensure in a positive way, our name is mentioned long after we're gone. Think about if that was a vision for each and every one of us, what we could accomplish. And so therefore, why not share all these lessons learned? And I go to great lengths to talk about hand up versus hand out. We all know what a handout is. And sometimes we need it. We were on welfare for a period of 3 years. We needed that to get back on our feet. But all we really want is an opportunity, and that's a hand up where I can display my true talents. I can give somebody a playbook that allows them, when that opportunity is presented to them or that hand up is presented to them, they're ready. Because those opportunities don't come every day. So when yours come, you better be ready. As they say, I don't need to get ready because I'm always ready. And so when that opportunity is presented to you, you've got to be ready.
I want to piggyback off the readiness piece.
Yeah.
Were there times in this book when you were writing it where you felt like, am I really ready to share? And you fill in the blank. Were there those moments you had to walk away from the screen?
Yeah, because here's the challenge is, how do you pronounce your name? My wife's name is Barbita, so I'm very sensitive to names.
You're fine, man. Mina.
Yeah. Okay, Mina. The biggest challenge, Mina, is when you're writing a book, you're constantly looking in the mirror and say, do I really measure up to this person I'm talking about, the good and the bad? And that is daunting. My wife said, don't call it haunting, call it daunting. It is daunting when you're looking in the mirror every day and saying, am I giving my best? Is this book authentic, Steve? Is it truthful? Are you ready for pushback if it comes your way? Are you ready for the praise? But also, are you ready when people are not happy with what you have to say? Are you prepared for that? And so that constantly looking in the mirror every time we would sit down and write, it would take a lot out of me. It's almost draining.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there saying, am I living up to this? Am I being truthful? Am I being authentic? And having that mirror in your face every day is hard. And so that was difficult for me getting through that point.
I can't imagine. Once again, I felt like I was talking to you some of these, and I felt like I was there. And one place where I felt like I was there literally was in the motel room, man. Can you take us to that? Because I guess about 10, 15 minutes from our house now, maybe a little longer. One morning I had to get up early and I had to drive to somewhere. And it didn't hit me that kids were literally living in these extended stay places, Stephen, where I saw that school bus pull up one morning. And I thought, I've never thought about kids actually being there. And as I was reading your book, I thought, what was that like, man?
Well, we were only there a short period of time, and then we graduated to the housing projects. But the formative years was my mother was actually cleaning those rooms too, and then seeing how people treat another. So when you don't have something, people view you not the same. But to see your mother constantly come in with the right attitude, with the smile, with the commitment to work, is just a constant reminder. Just because I'm in this environment, just because I'm in this situation, that should not shape me. That should not dictate how I treat another person. So this ability to focus on what you can control, there are only two things: attitude and effort. Everything else there's nothing else you can control. So if you can get your handle around those two things, the chances of a life well lived go up dramatically. And those are some of those critical lessons I learned watching my mother clean those motel rooms when we graduated to the housing projects of Indianapolis, when our little nose was pressed against the window as other kids played outside after dark, and we could not. She was not deterred. She said, I'm not going to let this environment control how we act. Just because there are other kids out there at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, that doesn't mean my kids should be. So this idea of I'm going to focus on what I can control was just a life-changing, lessons.
Man, for my wife, she would, literally, I skipped this page, and I say skipped, I read it, but she came back to me and said, did you read this? And this was one of those places where, man, I gotta tell you, I did get a little caught up on this one scene. She's one of, I don't know how I missed it the first time, but she's in pink here. But okay. I did miss it, man. It says this: other than a few phone calls, I had little interaction with my father after we moved. He died, of course, in December 1977. When he was 37. You say here, my 17th birthday, my life wasn't greatly influenced by his presence, but my exhaustion definitely was shaped by his absence. Next to the whole life statement, this is probably the second best line in the book.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to me?
It is imagine walking in the dark and you can't see anything and you're just walking. You've ever woken up or been in a dark room and you're using your hands to try to find where the wall is, where the door is, and you're guiding. That's exhausting, trying to find your way, trying to figure out where's the door.
Yeah.
Going through life, not sure, who am I? How do I be a man? What does that look like? Where did I come from? And so you're going through life trying to figure it out. That is exhausting. What's not exhausting is when you got a clear path and you can just walk straight and the light is there, the roads are well lit. You see a lot of signs that say turn left, turn right. But when you go through life, particularly early on, and you're going down a dark road, there are no street signs, there's no light. You literally are trying to feel your way through. That's exhausting.
Very.
That's why it's so important, that people answer that second question, why have I been placed on this earth? Because that's what gives you light. That's what gives you street signs. That's what gives you the direction of where you're going. Think about all the young people that are going through life not sure why they're even here. This is why life in some of our tough cities have so little value, because people haven't put any value on it.
Yeah.
And so you think about the darkness they're going through, and that's exhausting. When you see 16, 17-year-old kids and they look tired, they have no energy, they're not just happy with life. You're like, at 16 or 17, what do you have to be sad about? Well, you and I know, when you don't feel that you have a purpose in your life and you're walking a dark road, that's exhausting.
Man, one of the things I resonate just with you and just by reading and researching also is use a phrase called, what's your fight? And so I got asked this question, when did you say, okay, this is my fight?
I got fired. I got fired, and I knew it was in me. You know, back to the point, our parents become smarter the older we become. I saw the sacrifice that my mother, and I saw the way she served her kids. And so therefore, this idea of servant leadership is how you get rewarded. This is how you get paid, by serving others. And so I was 23. I was the youngest sales manager for a company called American Hospital Supply. And everything that got me to this point was based on what I did. But once you get the privilege of leading men and women, it's less about what you do, it's more about what you get them to do. And clearly my team was not performing, and I got fired. And then Darnell Martin, who's no longer with us, I want to go back to that quote, if they're still mentioning your name long after you're gone. Darnell's been dead for 25 plus years, and I'm still mentioning his name. I write about him in the book. He called me the day that I got fired and said, look, I see more in you than you see in yourself and what others see. But if you continue to lead the way you're leading, you're not going to be successful, and you're not going to reach your full potential. So he said, I'm going to bring you to Chicago. I don't have a job for you, African-American leader, but I'm going to show you, back to JB allowing you to follow him for 3 months. He brought me to Chicago and allowed me, without a portfolio, to learn and grow and develop. And I saw the way his team responded to him. I saw how much they put out for him, because the more he poured into them, the more they gave him back. 5, 6 times over. You know that old phrase, you can't outgive God, right? You can go give it, and you can't outgive him. And the more you serve people, you actually get more. And so through that process, I rediscovered. So I'm like a born again Christian, like a Christian, grew up in the church, lost my way. And that's why they call it born again, because a new person is birthed. Being with Darnell, I rediscovered why I was placed on this earth, and I dedicated myself to serving others, and my career took off after that.
You talk about a Pastor Randy Hall in the book, man.
Yes.
Why did he make the book, if that's a fair question to ask?
Well, when you write a book, is that Pastor Randy told me, he said, look, Steve, we all have a pulpit. Mine just happens to be in this church on Sunday morning and Wednesday and Thursday, but that's a whole nother story about how much time we got to go to church. But he said, your pulpit is business. And so when you come into my church, I'm gonna hit you right between the eyes. In business, you can't do that. You're gonna scare everybody away. So the way you have to use your pulpit is how you handle yourself, how you carry yourself, what you say, what you don't say, and all of that kind of stuff. And so by mentioning Pastor Randy and then talking about my mom's faith, my wife's faith, I am speaking to believers, but I'm also speaking to the non-believers as well. So just so you don't lose sight of how I got here, certainly I've worked hard, I've taken advantage of the opportunities, but only by the grace of God. So how do I weave through this faith-based message throughout the book, which is what I tried to do in a way that invites non-believers into the conversation? Because you and I know when you are preaching the gospel, you've got to bring people in. You can't hit them over the head. You can't make them listen. You have to invite them in. So if my accomplishments, my level of success invites you in, then I'm using this the right way. But if I use my success to better me or to get more money in my pocket, that's not the right way. But if I use whatever celebrity I have, whatever success I have to invite you in, and now we have a conversation, and you can see the outcome of this faith, which is hopefully a life well lived, a life of legacy, that will intrigue you. Because people often say, well, where does the joy come from? There's no amount of money you can give me. There's no amount of, commercial success or material things. That's all short-lived. I'll give you an example. You know, my wife and I, we go away every Christmas as a family. My wife's son and I, we have a 9-year-old son.
I have a 9-year-old daughter, by the way.
Okay, well, there you go.
I'm sorry.
Maybe they'll meet and create a deal in the future.
Oh,
But we decided our headline for the year was we're going to choose joy.
wow.
And so as a family, we said, this is our headline. And so therefore, every morning when we wake up, we make a conscious decision to choose joy. And that's not easy. I'm telling you, man, there's a lot that weighs on us each and every day. World affairs, family affairs. You know, I got crazy brothers, just like everybody. You know, I got a crazy aunt over here. I mean, you know, we have things weighing on us every day.
Yeah.
But you consciously choose joy. And so the more I can talk about this in the book, the more I can talk about my wife's journey. There's a point I talk about in the book, our struggle with trying to have children. So the more I can show that, and people say, well, how did you get through that? There's only one way. And hopefully I've been able to communicate that faith-based message throughout the book. And therefore I thought it was important as I was acknowledging business leaders, my brothers, my friends, you know, how not authentic would that be if I didn't recognize someone who helped me stay center on my moral compass? So just by putting his name in there, I'm acknowledging and recognizing that God has played a major role in my life, and he used Pastor Randy as the vehicle to me.
Wow. I got to ask about Comcast.
Yes.
How do you manage 30,000 people?
Well, you don't. That's the trick. You don't. But you know what you do is you certainly start with, okay, how big is my circle of influence? So my direct reports, I had on average, I had anywhere from 14 to 16 direct reports at all times. I made sure that those men and women, we were aligned around values, hard work, teamwork, and all of that. So if I do a good job there, then they will replicate that in their organization, and then their people will replicate it in their organization, and that's how it pushes down. But I took out an insurance policy. I said, I can focus on my vice presidents and above. I had 100 of those. So if you were going to come work in my group, I personally interviewed you, not because I didn't have confidence in my team, but I wanted to ensure that we were hiring the men and women that would take these values and translate them through their organization. So now if I got the top 100 leaders and we're all thinking alike relative to values, we're all different. But if we have a connective tissue around values and what's important, my chances of success go way, way, way up. So that's how you manage 30,000 people. You're not managing 30,000. You're managing your direct reports in the circle around them. So the top 100, that's where I spent most of my time. That's where I focused. And then we knew that if they took that, they would go from there. Let me just share a little story with you real quick. And this is very important. One of the when I go out to dinner with people and all of this, we always start with questions to kind of get people, you know, talking to each other. And so one of the questions I like to ask is, I said, if you could be invisible for a day, what would you go do? 99% of the people say, I will follow my children. I want to see what kind of kids am I truly raising? I want to see them at school. I want to see them with their friends. I want to see them at lunch. Do they say their grace before lunch, or do they just do it around me? I want to follow my kids. 99% of the people, that's how they answer. So take that same analogy. What I would do is I would go every year, I would do about 100 focus groups. So I would meet with frontline employees. I would meet with middle managers. So that's my way of being invisible. So I'm now going in checking to say, look, all the stuff we talk about in that boardroom with my top 100 leaders, is that coming down through the system? If not, in those focus groups, I'm going to hear it. I'm going to hear a disconnect if our values are not seeping through the organization. So
Wow.
just like a mom would follow her kid to school and be invisible to see what their kids really are doing, that's what I'm doing, but I'm just doing it in the open. I'm not invisible. I let you know that I'm going to do 100 focus groups in this year. And so that means a good chance, Mr. Vice President of Sales, I'm going to be talking to your people.
Wow.
And they better play back to me, their conversation, my hope is, will be consistent with the values you and I talk about in this boardroom. If not, then we got a disconnect and we got a problem.
Wow. Last question. I want to give you some time to take a break for our next time here.
Yeah.
How do you see leadership and how do you lead well in a culture? Let's just be really honest. It's been a long season.
Yeah.
How do you lead well in today's culture?
It's such a good question. The first thing is you can't be two people. You got to be one person. You can't be a person at work and a person at home. It's too confusing. So you gotta be one person. Number two, you gotta have a clear compass, moral compass on what is the North Star for you. So my North Star always is my purpose in life. How can I create a table of prosperity where as many men and women can sit as possible?
Yeah.
And so when I take that into what I would do in every room that I'm in, I would always have two empty chairs. I would have a customer chair and an employee chair. We even labeled them customer chair and employee chair. And so I tell our team is every meeting we're in, we're going to make decisions. But do we feel comfortable that if our employees and our customers were sitting here in this room with us, listening to our dialogue, would we feel comfortable making these decisions? Now, I'm not saying they're going to agree with us, but have we thought through it? Do we have enough thought and rationale for our decisions? Even if you disagree with me, at least you can say, I understand where you're coming from. I disagree with your decision. And so when you have two empty chairs that are sitting in your room at all times, listening to your conversation,
wow,
that keeps you on the straight and narrow. So we try to lead by example. We try to stay focused on our North Star, which is to create a table of prosperity for as many of our people as we possibly can. That's how you lead. You have a clear vision, you have a compass that's driving you, and you're doing everything with the level of transparency so where everybody knows exactly what's happening. Now, there's some private moments you can't go to your employees, but you get my point.
I do.
We're making a decision knowing that we have to go talk to those customers or those employees and let them know. And do we feel comfortable doing that?
I do get it. And by the way, the customer service at Comcast has gotten way better.
It's been a long journey.
I mean, way better. One time, I wanted to throw the box out the window.
It's a journey, right?
It's gotten way better, man. I'll say that to you. Last question before our next time here with the African American Museum. When you finished writing this, did you feel like you said it all when you sent it in to the publisher?
The thing probably that is daunting for me is I couldn't mention everybody.
Oh.
I mean, there are people that, in the acknowledgement, I say, all my friends, I see you. There's so many people who made a difference that might be offended that they're not in the book.
Yeah.
And I wish I could mention everyone. I even talk about work colleagues. I wish I could mention everyone, all my family members. I can only mention a few people. And I had to focus on, does this story that I'm going to share, does it benefit the audience? And so if it did, then I shared the story. So I felt, talking about my mother, I feel that this is a book, not just for business people, it's for that single mom with 4 boys that she could go buy this book for them and let them read it. It's for that single mom who needs a level of encouragement. So sharing the story about my mom, I felt it would really serve the readers. That's why she's in it. talking about my wife and her journey and how she supports a Black man, how a sister supports a Black man, and together they achieve a level of success. So I felt it was important to talk about my wife so other couples could see couples doing it together. Not easy, but doing it together, and came through heartache. I talk about a guy named Rich Jennings, who's a brother who replaced me as president of Comcast West, where I talked about him, sharp brother. He's coming in looking hip hop, looks sharp. And I'm like, look, that's not the look of a president. I'm just telling you. Now you get to make that call.
Look the part is what you say.
And we talk about that in the book. So I shared that story because I felt a lot of people could benefit from that. And so that's how I tried to decide, who I talked about, which stories I shared, thinking about where we have the biggest impact. So that's the piece that sits with me every day is, man, somebody's going to be hurt. Someone's not going to be happy. Someone's not going to feel great that I did not mention in the book, but that does not mean you're not important to me. You are, but there's only so many pages that you can use up.
Because there's so many folks who go into this process that you just go, man, I can't believe I'm the only one that gets the credit for it. But there are 24 or 4 dozen people who were a part of it too, if that makes sense.
But that's why what your point is such a good one, because I had somebody say, Steve, what advice would you give a younger Steve White, or what advice would you go give to a young 13, 14, 15-year-old? I would say, choose wisely who you hang out with. Yeah. And so even in this book, the majority of the people that I hang out with, they're going to be happy for me because they're those kind of friends. So who you surround yourself with, particularly as a young person, becomes very critical. So I'm sure you think about with your 9-year-old daughter. My wife controls the play dates for my 9-year-old son. Everybody comes to our house. And if you haven't been background checked or have
Steven.
You're not coming into this house. Now, my son doesn't know what's happening, but she's orchestrating and making sure that he is surrounded by young boys and young girls that share a shared value system. Because you and I know we only have so much influence. When we're not around, those friends will be influencing them.